So Alex is Adobe Commerce technical lead at comwrap, and he's been working with Magento for over 12 years. So, and you know what, he maintains a Magento community. He looks at all Magento DevDocs, and he's passionate and loves everything Adobe Commerce and Magento community projects have to offer. So he's passionate about Adobe Commerce. To provide, you know, he's one of these people that you can meet up with, talk to. He's a very friendly guy. I know that because he comes across well. I spoke to him and he was like, dude, you're cool. Just get on with it. I'll be fine. Whatever you want to introduce me, I'll just do it. So without further ado, let me welcome today Alex Lyzun.
Thank you very much for introduction. That was one of the best intros I had. So yeah, welcome everybody. I'm really happy you could join us today. And we will talk today a bit about the Magento and NewRelic, how they work together and what basically it's all this about. I will skip this slide. Thank you. So you save some time for me. So basically the coming to general question, I mean, what is NewRelic is? And I mean, yeah, you can read like official statement that NewRelic helps engineers to create more perfect software, instrument, analyze, troubleshoot, and optimize your entire software stack. And in shortly, that's basically the application analysis tool, which is tracking all the transactions that's going on inside of your system. In our use case, it's Magento. So each single transaction which is going on a front end or on a back end, all data which coming in and coming out. And basically, why NewRelic? I mean, why are we talking about this today as we are on Meet Magento? Because NewRelic is a tool which is coming out of the box, available for all Adobe Commerce Cloud solutions. And I really worked with a lot of them. And I have a strong feeling that the developers who are working with the cloud solutions, they're not really understand how powerful this tool is and what can it really do for your project. And yeah, in shortly, what is available when you're working with NewRelic and Adobe Commerce Cloud, we have NewRelic APM. It's an application monitoring tool. We have infrastructure, which is telling you how your system behaves, works, in communication with other parts of the software or of the whole infrastructure. And we have NewRelic logs, which I really like. That's, I mean, I would not say it's quite fresh, but it's about a year plus available with Magento together, especially when we're working with a cloud, which has multiple instances always. And it's sometimes been hard to find out the exact logs we want to find. But yeah, we are still in Magento world here. So basically NewRelic is not limited by commerce. You can definitely use it for your Magento on-premise installations, which is open source or commerce. And you basically just have to install it yourself in this case, or ask your server provider to do it for you. And it's super easy. You just install in the agent, you configure in the agent, and it's directly starting to check all information which your system produce. Let's jump in shortly to APM. So this is application monitor, and if you are starting with a fresh Magento instance or Magento Cloud instance, I guess I'm not allowed to say that. It's have to be Adobe Commerce Cloud instance, and basically you see directly production and staging environments. In this case, it's an application overview. And you see that we have two applications connected out of box, staging and prod. It can be much more here. So when you get in the access to NewRelic itself, so you have a service, means it's not really limited to run and track only Magento. In modern world, Magento is not anymore just in like standalone system. Yeah, it is like in most open source solution, I assume. But if you're talking about the complex integration, Magento is just a small part of the whole infrastructure. So it's basically covering the e-commerce features, but it can be also integrated with any other front-end systems, has a really huge amount of different ERPs, PSPs integrated together, so the traffic is flowed there and back. And means you can track and add all this information here, and then you can track all the parts of your infrastructure if you basically have enough control of them, because in a lot of cases, it's not like this. You mostly working within clients integrations, and you basically cannot easily integrate it here. But yeah, if you have an access, and really would advise to add them here. And you going basically directly with, when you open the application, to the general summary overview, where you see your web transaction flow, you see the throughput, you see error rates, abdex score, and a lot of more. I will go today through this one. And the most used part of it is basically just a time switcher, because by default it's limited to 30 minutes time frame, but you can choose any time frame you want to, basically since project start till current date. And you can see how the data is flowing then back. And yeah, if you're talking about, let's say I'm coming to my NewRelic dashboard, I see that, oh, okay, the default time frame, everything looks quite fine. I mean, transaction trace is quite okay, the response time is fine. That's not always can be true, because NewRelic collected on a live mode, and it's checking the whole statistic since the project beginning for you. And if you, let's say, switch already to 3 hours, you may see that, oh, okay, there have been already some errors which happened, which basically nobody reported, and you didn't mention that. Yeah, the trace looks a bit different. So you have some downs and up, depends on the throughput on the website. And if we will, let's say, switch to 6 hours frame, then you definitely see that something is wrong with your system. I mean, you have those big spikes here, which is basically in case if nobody reported it. I mean, if the client didn't mention that there is a problem, if customer didn't tell you anything, it doesn't mean that everything is still fine. There still so I mean, with this diagram, you definitely can see that something went wrong, and it can be that it's one-time problem, but it's also can happen that it will appear again, and it may appear more often and often, which basically just blow up in some day if you have really some problem with your software, which lead to some memory issues, which, I don't know, collect a lot of data into the database, making too many calls by some particular use cases and so on. So always try to check the different timeframes to be able to detect the general flow. Then we will go to transactions. I mean, I would be happy to cover all NewRelic features, but unfortunately, I would need maybe a couple of days non-stop talking just to tell everything which this system provides. So I will focus on the most used by me and by my team. So we have a transactions. The transactions, it's the, let's say, most time-consuming transactions you have on a website in this case, and that definitely helps you to understand where your traffic is coming in, or which part of your system is eating most of the resources. And it's basically, you can also just find out why one or another transactions are technically here when it's not expected by you, or but not expected by your implementation. And even more, I mean, if you see that something looks strange, I mean, that's always up to you. You have to go deeper, or you can go deeper. You can go to transactions itself. So you can go to the traces which are collected. They're not collected always. I mean, if the transaction is quite fast enough, so let's say if you have some category view which opened within 10 milliseconds, the trace will not be saved. It's saving really the slow traces. And in this case, you can see also which page been opened. And by the way, even if you look on this, the slowest transactions, we can see that the same page basically causing the same slow response, which can be different use cases. I mean, in most cases, there are some custom implementation of widgets or elements which are located on this particular category page, for example. And if you want to know what exactly going on, you can always go inside. And when you go inside, you have a full transaction stack. There are whole calls that have been executed within your code base, and with defining how much time this call took. So you technically can just find out the slowest places. You can sometimes really strangely or accidentally find in some fancy, funny stuff which you didn't expect at all, which maybe not causing an issue. but you've been very surprised that you see one or another trace there. That's, by the way, yeah, I assume for the fans of Blackfire, very similar to the Blackfire itself and this one also. So you can then also go deep to the MySQL level, so to the database calls, and to see which calls, when, and how long they've been executed. Then we can also switch to database monitor. That's more general. I mean, if in this case we talked about one single transaction and we see the SQL queries there, then in database monitor it's more general. We see, let's say, the whole calls list, which queries been executed, and let's say how time they consumed. So that's also some place where you troubleshoot your system performance, and you can define that, yeah, something is wrong with the system, or in a best case that everything is fine with the system. That's also good to know, I would say. Then another dashboard which is really used often, that's an errors dashboard, which checking the errors when they happen and why they happen. And I would say, as I mentioned before, if clients or customer do not report any issues with your system, then it doesn't mean there are no issues. And you still can find them here. I mean, in most of the cases, if customer see a problem, he just go into another website. He's looking the solution on another place, or he trying to buy the stuff from another place, and he's not writing the support, hey, the homepage load too slow for me, despite I'm doing this sometimes. But yeah, and this errors list is allow you to predict the errors. So the main goal of the whole NewRelic infrastructure, as for me, is to find out the problem before your customer found it, or what can be worse, your client. Yeah, and then if you go inside of the errors, you definitely can just see what's going on when the error and why it was executed. And then you can find the same transactions and to basically, again, find the trace for it and trace down to the problem, to why, and basically, yeah, why it's happened, the main part. And technically, those errors, transactions, stats, and all this stuff, that's just data which coming into the NewRelic, and you can definitely just search by this one. There is a query language on NewRelic named NewRelic Query Language, and you easily can just access any data you received from your Magento system, from your infrastructure, from any other system you connected together for your whole software. And you can just easily use it. It's very similar to the SQL. And if I shortly just jump back, like all those diagrams, which I presented here, they base on those transactions data, which means you can easily replicate them, or you can make something which is more valuable for you, and to track them. And also just directly from here, you can create alerts for that. I will come to this point about a bit later, but yeah, that's just one example. And you can also, for your dashboards, I mean, not always have to be the table view, because yeah, transaction is just like a table view mostly. You can make some fancy stuff out of it for nicely present it to you, to your customer. Maybe you sold them some Magento 2 update, and then you can present them, hey, have a look. I mean, that's how it was, that's how it is now. So we made a cool job, and so on. And yeah, make some pie charts and so on. Yeah, that was shortly about the basics, which I wanted to cover. Then I tried to collect some info or some data, which I found out on our projects, and some interesting stuff for you. So first of all is IPs. And yeah, I mean, you all get in the traffic to your website. It's not always your customer traffic. It can be the bots traffic. It can be some import processes, CRM systems, whatever else, which is sending or getting data out of your system. And this all has been tracked. And you just execute such simple query, which telling you the IP frequency calls to your system into the logs. Then you can see that, let's say, in this use case, one IP were called executed 3,000 transactions within last hour. And compared to others, that's really a big gap. And I mean, nicely that you can see the header here. So you can see that it's some bot. that's a use cases which I honestly just block in them directly. So if you see on monitor that something is sending or getting the data out of the system in the way that you not expect, or just producing too many traffic, just try to define what is that. I mean, it can be import-export process, which can be heavy if you're using the APIs, for example. It can be some, ERP systems integrated, which send in the data, which get in the data. It can be the security scan tools that have to be there. Then yeah, that's fine. It can be some IPs which is known by you or by your customer, which is technically they have a big fulfillment department, or they have a content management team which are intensively working on a website. Then calls from one IP can be fine. Despite in our pandemic time, that's also can be strange, like why are they all sitting into the office, or despite, yeah, they can use VPN, but still. And yeah, maybe some other reason which you think it's fine. If you have no idea and you don't like it, just block it. You can do it. I mean, if you're using, coming back to Adobe Commerce Cloud, if you're using Fastly, then you can just block it there easily. Otherwise, contact your provider or do it yourself. And if you also can go down to IP itself, and then basically you can see that, yeah, which URL has been called from this particular IP, and I definitely don't like it, so I just lock it directly. Then another use case, which I will be happy to see some ideas about this one, because I already asked it. I had also some ideas, but shortly, there from one single particular IP, we had the use case that the guys tried to add to the shopping cart the products intensively, like really every second, by just using cart add call, despite they got 500 errors back often. But still, I mean, there was a use case that been executed, and from practical reason, honestly, I mean, yeah, you can maybe just try to put your concurrent stock down if you will try to add huge amount of product to the shopping cart, or you want to try to overload the system by this operation. But yeah, just would be interesting to hear the reason why this can be happen. But yeah, those also been directly banned, and you can track like this, like any type of transaction. So as I mentioned, by using the NRQL, you can just track any data, filter any data you want to. I mean, talking about the query language, it's really, again, we can go down to another presentation, which take a couple of hours just to cover all use cases you can do with the query language. But yeah, unfortunately, we don't have so much time. And yeah, another point how we found this out, it's basically because the cookie side being overloaded. I mean, if you're trying to add a product to the shopping cart, it's adding the message. And if you do an automated way, you're not always opening the page just to release those messages, and they've just been overloaded. Maybe I just told to the guys who tried to do it how to avoid it being detected, but yeah, hope they're not listening. Another point is always monitor your external services. I mean, this dashboard is quite standard one, nothing non-standard, but the figures which I saw here was quite interesting to me. So this is basically monitoring all services which call in outside of your Magento. So all data you're trying to receive from another system, or your modules try to receive from another system. And that's only one project, so the list is really massive. And you can see also some interesting stuff there. I mean, in a lot of use cases, they can be harmless. So they're not really doing any troubles, called very rare, and you can live with them quite okay. But in some cases, they can make a lot of troubles. Yeah, just to try to zoom it in a bit. So, but you can see, let's say for this example, we have API Magento called a lot. That's fine. I mean, we have product recommendations and data services installed on this project, which trigger in the indexing, but still basically taking quite a lot of time. And I honestly don't know how it will be heavy if we have 1-2 million of products there, which updates intensively. But yeah, in a lot of cases, like a Fastly, totally fine. Like NewRelic is fine. I would not say that all others are required. Let's say a Masti module, it's updating the notifications or like news feed, which is honestly from all third-party providers. I don't want to see the advertisement in my news feed, in my notification feed about new extensions or new versions being released. Maybe that's interesting for the people who are not developing Magento and using it just like a service, but yeah. And another use case, which is more common, is that, as I mentioned, Magento not anymore the standalone system. It's part of the huge can be the part of the huge infrastructure, and means, for example, you get in the prices, you get in the stock on the fly for your products. So you have the integrations to another systems where Magento is not the stock leading system. And yeah, you're doing the APIs for that. And in most cases, you're not controlling those services. So you cannot really be sure that the response time is fast, that there's correct error handling, that if response is slow, then there will be some timeout or errors or some dummy data returned, like default data. Just in most cases, working with the stuff you get. And yeah, this can cause really big issues. I mean, that's just one example where there's some client interfaces which get in the stock updates, really creating a huge spike, creating a huge performance impact because the stock service just responds slowly. And you can imagine if you add it on the shopping cart to checkout process, then your checkout process is fully blocked. If you don't develop in the mechanism, which is, let's say, I mean, some fallback mechanism, like to use Magento default stock, to use like non-stock management for in case the response is slower than 5 seconds and so on. And that's a good point where you definitely can see it, because for this particular use case, it was reported not so fast. I guess we got understanding and we had such issues only a couple of weeks later on. And yeah, main use cases of the external services, I would say their main use cases, that's not a full list. They can be extended or can be even reduced. But what I saw, it's a newsletter modules, it's a text calculation modules, mostly for USA used, by the way. It's VAT validation for Europe. It's different shipping carriers. In most cases, they are there. PSP is always, in most cases, there. NewRelic and Fastly CDN if you're using them. I mean, if not, they're not here. And yeah, you can add any other services you think if it's fine, and if it's fine, just leave it. And if it's not fine, try to find out if you really need it or you can block it somehow. And yeah, not typical use cases, that was mostly the modules notification stuff and the license validation of different third-party modules. And I'm honestly trust to the people, and I would be happy if there will be no license validation parts or some, I don't know, IonCube encoded license PHP files, which, yeah, I guess if you're a Magento developer, you know what I'm talking about. And yeah. And yeah, that was just one example I wanted to pick up. That was a Masti feed refresh, which is basically quite fine. I mean, we can live with it. I mean, they have modules which are doing the good service, and they create their own cron job with their own group. It's basically not doing any harm to the system. And if even the response is slow, the system still behave fine. But there can be a use case, as I mentioned, if that the extensions develop in a way that if even some feed refresh response is slow, then let's say your cron job is failed because they put it in general cron job group, and so on. And that's more, this example is more than, I just want to ask the third-party extension providers in general, not only guys who are doing some non-extension, like the stuff which are not responsibility of extension, like feed refresh, but which are also doing the extensions development, which has a cron jobs, no matter in which group they are, in general, which has a cron jobs. And please don't try to put your cron job if you're doing them once a day, always in the midnight. Really had a huge amount of use cases when a lot of extension, which is a cron job, always put in to run it once a day in the midnight. That can cause a problem. I mean, if you're using some common groups, it really can cause an issue that just like this one. So that's not enough memory to process all of them because they're all executing together. Try to really somehow separate it on different timeframes. I know there will be crossing, but much less than really. I guess I never saw extension which run 10 minutes before 12 or so. Another part is the Magento consumers. There are Magento consumers, basically by default, they're all enabled, and then all of them are enabled. I mean, if you use in the RabbitMQ, for example, that's, I guess, most common case. Yeah, just try to enable only those you need. I mean, the first and main reason Magento is growing and the amount of consumers is also adding on top there means, yeah, the more add, the more resources it will use. And you don't need all of them, trust me. I mean, can be use case where you really need all of them, but in a lot of cases, you don't need all of them. And then this just one example where we limited the list of consumers only to what we need. And yeah, just the amount, the cron job for consumers running were reduced. And that's your time. That's time of your server. That's time of your system, which can be used for another stuff, which can, yeah, just help to improve the general performance on your running system. Yes, another quite nice stuff, it's a key transaction. So basically every transaction you see in a list, you can add as a key transaction, which will then highlight for you. And then you can track it separately, because in general transaction overview, you have them all together because that's one general flow. And with transactions, with key transactions, you can definitely just track one single ones, and then you can see how they perform on different time frames. So like on this example, disable status list, that's an API call for disabling the, basically the service contract custom developed for disabling the products. And you can see like how it was performed, why one another time it was slower. And I forgot to mention that before also, but on those diagrams, you can also zoom in. So they have a drag and drop functionality, and if you just choose any area with your mouse, on this one, you can just zoom into the time frame, and then you can see the particular traces, for example, for one single part of the time frame of your transaction flows. And yeah, also the key transaction has like a compare monitoring for different time slots. So you can see how fast it was, how fast was the response time, how fast was an AppDex index, that's a customer satisfaction index, yeah, which makes your life easier. So if you really think, I mean, if you're using the import process and you have using intensively the API endpoint for products import, you can then check how it performed. Magento NewRelic extension. The Magento has already out of box a NewRelic extension in any version. I mean, it's just there, which allow you to configure the NewRelic. It's not required to have it enabled. I mean, if you have an agent installed on the server, it will check everything fine and everything will be good. You just add in additional metrics to the NewRelic, which only Magento related metrics. And also there is a possibility to split the applications on the level of the areas. So you can separate the track the admin cron tab frontend global WebAPI REST, WebAPI SOAP, if you have GraphQL, if you use it. So each area will be reported separately. I mean, transaction will be separated by areas, which is also then easier to track the whole, and you still have the general one. And basically to enable that, there is a small checkbox, this last one. Don't be confused here on the naming. It was deprecated and it just was not updated here. And yeah, an additional reporting, which is NewRelic extension provides, is amount of products, so basically amount of different objects you have, website stores, and different modules which installed, delete, or removed from the system, or uninstalled from the system. You can also check it there. And also there's quite cool feature is a deployment. And you can create the deployment markers with your Magento. Then you can see definitely when deployment been done, you can see here, there, and then you can see they compare the different metrics before deployment and after deployment. And here you can see the slowest transaction, how they behave before and after. So like on this one, the fourth one, the fifth one, it's become faster after deployment. So some modification been made there. One note, it's not working with the default. There are pull requests in Magento 2 because NewRelic updated API. And yeah, feel free to get it. I will share then the slides later and I have a recording. I really trying to speed up looking at the time we have. NewRelic logs, that's what I really like. It's basically collecting all logs from the whole system in one place, in one dashboard, and you can really easy search there and find whatever data you need. It's collecting, if you're talking about Magento Commerce or Adobe Commerce, it's logging everything from the ETE tools, from Magento log directory, from the server log directory, Fastly and WAF logs. So Fastly web application firewall logs, and it's including all nodes you have. So if we're talking about, it's one of our projects where we have project with 12 nodes, 11 nodes, which is heavy. I mean, usually if you want to troubleshoot without the NewRelic logs, you need to go to its server because you don't know which node been loaded in one another transaction. But in this case, it's aggregate them all together and you see one general log. And you can easily search there. So you can define by the type. Let's say you can search by WAF, so that's Fastly Web Application Firewall logs, what been blocked, which errors been executed. You can search by different attributes and it's highlight you those. And you can search by messages, so by any content, and you can then also search by log file. If you exactly know that it's been logged on exception log of Magento, you can just filter and then you see the results. The dashboards is the way, it's basically all those queries I showed you, all those dashboards, you can use only those you need and collect them together on one dashboard only for your project and for yourself. So just very comfortable and convenient tool. Then use it, then you can just once a day, once a week, come there and you see all metrics you all need. And you can also collect the overview between different projects in one dashboard. That's if you're a Magento agency and you're working with multiple projects, you can have one dashboard for all your projects together, which let's say checks the response time or error rates and so on. So then you see everything in one place. Alerts and notifications. So you can also, all those queries I mentioned, you can alert them and you can add your email, your Slack channel, your Teams, basically your integration to receive the data for anything which is going wrong. There are default Magento alerts for commerce. They're already there. They're really awesome. There are a lot of data which is already tracked: Redis, CPU memory, HDD, error rates. And that's how it looks like if the alert been triggered. So we see that something is wrong. And you will start to get email notifications with the data of what's going wrong. How to create new conditions. Really, you can check on the NewRelic if you will use it. That's quite self-explanatory. You can create different metrics which are already predefined, define the condition thresholds and so on. And you can also track single transactions. Just really works super fast. If you realize how many data is tracked there, all these auto-completion functions are really awesome. And you can add any notification channel you want to, and then you will be notified about the issues which are popping out in the system. Almost done. And a very small bonus, the NewRelic has already Magento State Advanced application, so you can get an application there which provides you already grouped and created dashboards for the whole Magento infrastructure, which cover in Elasticsearch, Redis, MySQL, PHP, WAF, alerts, infrastructure, cross-indexing, and security of the whole your system. And it's basically collect all data. I mean, the huge amount of data you may be enough for troubleshoot the system, like CPU usage, response time, and so on. So feel free to go there and check how it looks like. Yes, and there are definitely a lot of more stuff on the NewRelic. So feel free to contact me if you have any questions. I will try to support you as much as I can. Yeah, thank you. That's all. I almost fit.
Thank you so much for that, Alex. That was very, very, very good in terms of all that you've covered. I want to say that in terms of where we're going to be going, because I think we don't have enough time for questions. So I see you put your Twitter handle for people to send you the questions. And it's similar, guys, please follow Alex on social media, because I tell you what, one of the most kindest, receptive guys I know, and he always comes back. So if you have any questions that you need to ask, please do ping him. Or I tell you what, if you put them in the chat, I'll collate all of them and I'll send it to him. Thank you so much again, Alex. Really appreciate that talk.